can see the slide. The slide's visible?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with the prayer. So we'll lead and follow. I will say one line, then you guys can repeat. Just be on mute so it's clear. Asato ma satgamaya
Asato ma satgamaya
tamaso ma jyotirgamaya
tamaso ma jyotirgamaya
mrityorma amritam gamaya.
mrityorma amritam gamaya.
So as we start these sessions, we'll just add another prayer. I think this you all are used to with Shanti. Yes. So we'll do this together. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. So the first part of our session will cover some basic concepts. The first will be around Yog and Swasth, then Panchakosh and Triguna, and we'll try and put these together. So that's the first part of today's talk. So Yog and Swasth. So let's start with Yog, since this is a course about Yog. So what is Yog? So what is Yog? Before that, I think often how it is said and written as, it's written as yoga, but it's almost said as yoga. So I think the first thing to realize is that yoga is not a word which comes from India or any Indian language. Yoga is a word, but not yoga. So yoga is something we exported yoga. It got written as YOGA and came back as yoga. So there is no language in India which has the word yoga, or probably it doesn't have any meaning in the Indian context. It is, of course, yoga is not only asana pranayam meditation, which is what it's become now. That's how we know yoga mostly. So there is a lot of, I think, thinking, philosophy, the thought process behind it, which covers all aspects of yoga. And that's what in this whole course we will try and uncover, the different streams and what yoga is. So coming to now, what is yoga? So these are what it is not. So what is it? Its origin, if we trace back to its Sanskrit origin, it comes from the word yuj. So in Sanskrit, every word comes from certain dhatus, and the dhatu that yog or yoga comes from is yuj, which means yog. But there are slightly more different meanings of yuj or origins of yuj also. So yuj, what is yuj? If we look at yuj in Sanskrit, again the dhatus are categorized in different, you can call, sections or chapters. So yuj is actually there in 3 sections, and accordingly the meaning or the implication of that word is slightly different. So the first one, if we see, is called yud sam yoge. Samyoge means jodna, or to unite, to bring together, to unite. And this is how Yuj or yoga is used in the schools of Vedanta, Nyaya, and Vaisheshika. So these are three out of the six schools. In one of the later sessions, we will talk more in detail about the six schools. But I'm introducing the six schools or the names just right now so that you get a sense that there is a lot of diversity, and we'll get into the diversity slowly as the course unfolds. So Yuj, Sangyoge, as in Jodna, is used in these three schools, the sense of Yuj. The second is Yuj Samadho, which is Samadhi. Essentially, it's Samadhi of two things, Samadho. And Samadhi translates in some ways as putting together or to integrate. And this is different than unite. So in unite, when things unite, they sort of become one eventually. In integration or in putting them together in samadhi, it's like both coexist together. So slightly different connotation there. And this is how it's used in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which along with Sankhya is the two other schools of thought. The first three, Vedanta, Nyaya, Vaisheshika is the two, and then Patanjali Yoga Sutras is the third. And the third one in which Yuj is used is Yuj Samyamne or Sanyam. In Hindi, it's Sanyam. So the words in blue are the Hindi words. The left is the origin in Sanskrit. In the way sort of we can look at Sanyam is it's to restrain or to be in equilibrium in some ways. And this is how it's used in the Bhagavad Gita quite a bit. So Bhagavad Gita uses yoga in actually all three senses. It's quite comprehensive in that sense because it is an integration of the different schools of philosophy. So, but Sanyam is brought specifically or explicitly out, called out in Bhagavad Gita. So these are sort of three very diverse origins in some ways of the word yuj itself, and yuj or yoga, from which it comes. And that sort of lends right in its origin on how yoga is used so very differently across even in our language when we are conversing, and sort of it brings it in its own confusion, if you may. So with these three, the other thing to note is that when we're talking of the first two, they lend themselves also to a certain way of a, a state, an end state of unitedness, an end state of integration of things. While the last one is a lot more focused on the process or the execution side. So these are the three connotations of huge. So what are some of the similar words that come as a result of this? So I would request if everyone could say what's come to their mind as they think of this interpretation of these three definitions of huge or yoga. You could put it in the chat box. Just one word. Yeah. Align. Unite, union, align. Yeah. Harmony, union in oneness, peace. Samyam. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. And these are some of the words I think that's come, and they keep coming up. So we already saw union, oneness. Someone has also seen it as onlyness, integration, wholeness, harmony, unity. And maybe we'll take just a minute to experience this for ourselves in our body, in our whole being. this meaning, this essence of yoga? Fusion. Thank you, Monica. Okay. So moving ahead. So what's the other side, right? So when we say Sanskrit word yuj, where it's coming from union, integrate. Anyway, so there's the two sides of yoga also, right? One is that it's also the process. So there are processes of yoga or coming into union, coming into integration, coming into oneness, into harmony. And we find those kinds of definitions in different scriptures as well. So, for example, Yog Vashisht says that yoga is a subtle trick to quieten the mind. Gita says skill in action is yoga. It says perform actions being established in yoga. So there is a certain process or processes of yoga that are defined. And equally, there is a state of yoga, the goal. So the way we reach, what we reach when we follow these processes, or the state that we reach when we follow these processes. This state itself, like we just now found, even in English, is defined in different words, and so is even in the Indian scriptures. So, be it the Gita, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, so they have defined it in different terms, and the terms that we have come across different schools is again moksha, kaivalya, nirvana, even in Buddhism, jivan mukti, purna. So different words have been used to describe this state of yoga. So both there is a state and a process. So for sort of trying to keep it simplify and remove this confusion, at least for this course, we will use yoga primarily for the state, and we sort of introduced a new term called yogification, which is itself a term of yogification between Sanskrit and English, which we will use to talk about the process of yoga, at least the dynamic process of yoga. We will use the term yogification. But this is a very important thing to just register the fact that the word yoga itself has both things in it already inbuilt, which is that it is a process as well as it is the end state. So it is the journey as well as the destination. Yeah. So that's the essence of yoga as a definition. Now, when we say that it is coming into union, if we just take union or integration for that matter as well, when things are coming into union or getting together, what is it that's coming together, right? Who or what is coming together? That comes as a second question. And again, there are different views, different aspects that one can explore around that. And these are all again open, right? So you can create finally your own meaning. And this is what we are sharing, is what we have seen as our meaning uh, arriving. So what is it that's coming together, right? So for example, these are some of the things that we can say is coming together: the Jivatma with the Paramatma, the Chitta with the Prana, us with the outside world, us with ourselves. So myself with my own aspects of my being, my with outside, individual consciousness with the universal consciousness, the part with the whole. So there are many ways that we can describe what are the aspects that are coming together. And this is also a place where sometimes the different darshanas or the schools of philosophy, the six that we talked about, they also uh, describe it differently. And I think that's where there is a difference. But fundamentally, towards the goal, what the goal is, there is a lot of alignment or similarity in the thought process. The next question, of course, is why. Why do all this, right? So there are some answers which I am sharing. So one, of course, from Swami Vivekananda, he says each soul is potentially divine, and the goal is to manifest this divinity within. And we'll come to this in a more detailed way later on as well. But this is to him essentially the reason why. Why yoga? Because to manifest the divinity within. He then says also that yoga is a means of compressing one's evolution into a single life or a few months or even a few hours of one's bodily existence. So it's a process, according to him, to compress the entire evolution into a single life or even a shorter time frame. Similarly, Aurobindo ji says that this is a methodical, conscious effort towards self-development of the potentialities latent in the individual. These are very good modern definitions, very contextual, at least we found them. That's why we're sharing them. If you see the two statements, they also are a kind of a definition of yoga from Swami Vivekananda ji and Sri Aurobindo ji, a modern definition, so to say, in the context of how uh, how the world is now, or at least was. Not much has changed in the last 100 years at this level. So this is why. So before we move to the next topic, Swasth, let's see if there are any thoughts, questions, comments, quick ones. We have a lot of ground to cover, but we can take that. Quick reactions, or you could also type it out if that's helpful. Clear? Any big questions? Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think look at the material, it will sink in. It's not simple, the definitions. Tushar, saw your comment. Yeah, this review will be required. Okay. So let's move to the next concept, Swasth. So what is Swasth? So Swasth, of course, the one way we know Swasth is health, right? And so how is health? Let's see a modern definition of what health is. So WHO defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. WHO also had recognized another dimension, a fourth dimension of spiritual well-being, but many countries didn't agree to including it in the formal definition. So there's a separate notification around it. Sri Aurobindo again also emphasized an all-round personality development at the physical, mental, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual levels. So even I think now Western as well as Indian traditional has been where we've included all aspects to mean health, not just the physical side, not just absence of disease, as WHO has put it. Right? So let's look at some of the more traditional definitions. Right. So but maybe sorry, before the definitions, let's look at what the word itself breaks up into. So when we see Swasth etymologically, it's made up of two components in Sanskrit. One is Swa and the other is Tha. And I think this is something again, probably it's been discussed in Sanjeevani, but to re-emphasize. So what is Swa? Swa means oneself, one self, Atman, and Stha means to be established in. So even if you see the English word stable, established itself with an A earlier, so stand, they also come from the same sound of Stha. So Swasth is to be established in oneself, literally. So how did this being established in oneself result in being understood as health, right? So that's where some of the scriptures help us. So for example, in the Patanjali Yog Sutra 1.3, we see this, right? So it says tada drushtu swarupe avasthanam. So then, and this comes right after the definition of, interestingly, yog in this, right? Then, which is once you are in that state, you become avasthit or sthit in your swarup. Who becomes a drishtu? So the person who is seeing or who is on this journey. The seer is the literal translation, but it's the person who is on this journey, a yogic journey. He or she, sorry, becomes established in their self. So swarupe avasthanam. So the swasth word has been split here very, very explicitly. So that's one way of looking at swasth. Now, if you look at Shushruta Samhita, which is the essence of Ayurveda, the state of Ayurveda, there the word swasth, comes in explicitly. The word swasth comes in explicitly. So it says swasth iti abhidhiti. So this is what is swasth. What is swasth? The rest is the definition. Sama dosha, samha agni, sama dhatu, malha kriya, prasanna atma indriyaman. So sama dosha, sama is equilibrium. So then it elaborates the different functions which are in equilibrium. So our doshas, agni, which is the digestive fire, our dhatus, malakriya is our excretion process, prasanna being joyful, atma indriya. So all our senses and our mind are in a state of prasanna. So there is atma, indriya, mana. So mental, sensual, spiritual, all delight, and this is all around the body, that the body functions are in equilibrium. So that is the state of swasth. So we're finding both the definitions here of swasth in the scriptures as well, which is around equilibrium, around well-being at physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, sensual level, and also the as an output of the yogic process. Yes, so this in essence comes to what swasth is. So let's see if we can do a small exploration to see this a little more. So I'll request everyone to stand up. Stand up. And try and notice the difference in space between your feet as you stand up. And find, so get to a place where it's stable. See how your feet are. See whether they are in line with your thighs, or they are slightly wide, or they are slightly inward. Are the feet touching? There's no right way. The idea is to find that spot as you stand with your hands and shoulders relaxed on the side, where it feels completely stable to you. Adjust your feet so that that stability comes, because at different points for different people that stability will come. And let your entire weight be on the feet. So see very consciously, feel your weight being transferred from your head to your shoulders, to the spine, to your hip, to your pelvis region, from there to the hip, the thigh bone, the knee, the shin, the ankle, then to the feet. And then on the ground. Notice your breathing as you experience this stillness. Try and keep your gaze also on one point. Take your time to experience this. Whenever you feel ready, slowly move your fingers, your feet, and you can come back to your place. And maybe just describe your experience in a sentence or a word in the chat, how it was.
కాలు కింద ప్యాంటా
Yeah. Balance and sway. Geeta, did you try adjusting the distance between your feet?
Yes, I did.
So how far apart were they? Were they wide enough?
Shoulder distance.
So you can try even more. So whatever. So it's basically finding that gap where it will be stable, and it's different for. There is no right answer. So sometimes as an exploration, we also do to start with joint feet and then go a little apart, go a little apart. So the joint is the toughest. I don't know if you guys have tried Tadasan, right, in your classes now. So you would see that. So as you go apart, it will change. The stability will change. Your weight bearing changes. This is just our base of support widens as you go across and more likely to feel stable. So try and explore that next time on your own.
Yeah.
Seek stillness. Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So this is one simple way to just try and see this stability in us. Like just can we stand? And to me, standing is important because we have evolved to stand. I was just seeing a documentary. We found that it took, I think, about 4 million years for us to evolve from apes in the tree to standing humans, where we became bipedal from being on the fours, and a lot of changes in our bone structure happened to enable that. Uh, So it's very important that we live to that. To me, at least physically, is a core part of our existence as humans to being standing. Uh, so while a lot emphasis is given on sitting postures, I know in yoga for meditation particularly, but standing has its own role to play. So try and see, explore this. This is an activity you can do also on your own every day, a few minutes. Just try and stand, nothing else, and feel that weight being transferred to the ground and relax. Okay. So this is one definition of swasth, one way of understanding swasth very simply. So from this sort of a conclusion, you can say we made is that yog, the state of yog is the state of swasth, which is being established in yourself. And the processes of yoga are also the process of becoming swasth. So there's a very strong uh, equality almost, for lack of a better word, or a correlation between yoga and swasth. So we will use this often interchangeably as well. These two words, so yoga and swasth, and this is to be, I think, given the name of the organization is also Swasth Foundation or Swasth Yoga Institute. This is not how we understood it when we named ourselves Swasth. It sort of got us to that point in our own evolution in the last 12 years. So Swasth and yoga are equal.